I'm very interested in my work as propaganda, and it's kind of really important for it to exist in all these different venues besides just like the gallery or the museum, but also like the fact that there's so much bad photography about this bankruptcy and economy subject right now that I just kind of, in a very like egotistical way, want to fix it, and make it start to like look like it should look, Yeah, the Copia project is a project that started like way back in 2001, and it was basically a response, a little bit of a smart-ass response to like the president saying we needed to shop to deal with 9/11 and what was potentially could happen economically. So Copia kind of started out focusing on like middle class, big box shoppers and like people shopping, patriotic shopping in Walmarts and Kmarts and malls across the country. That project was called Retail, so it's kind of like one chapter of the larger Copia project, and it was the first one. So I worked on thrift for like from 2005 to last year, 2008. There's a chapter of retail, there's a chapter of thrift, but the most recent chapter is called Dark Stores, Ghost Boxes, and Dead Malls, and that's doing these 8x10 pictures, mostly at night, of the exteriors and sometimes the interiors of these empty, hulking, giant retail places. And in some cases, they're the same places that I photographed at the beginning of the project that are now like empty or abandoned. And my photographs operate like a lot of photography has historically, especially in this most recent work, by simply like illuminating things that we don't necessarily pay attention to or want to even pay attention to. They literally turn the lights on. I'm interested in raising consciousness about the world, through my work and through teaching. I think teaching's a big part of that too. I think we need to live consciously in the world. We can't just kind of like live in the self. And that plays into my work in a very big way, in that to look at it and kind of appreciate it requires a heavy amount of self-awareness, I think. I believe that. I think it's one of the reasons why like the people who buy it seem to be a certain type of people. It's not always easy to sell a photograph of somebody shopping and looking dazed out of their mind in a Walmart, right? But if you have a self-awareness and you understand that not only is that you, and buying the thing is making you also implicit in that activity, but by doing that, you actually realize like, well, I'm doing that consciously, right? I'm aware of myself in that situation. I'm not just living in an illusion. It's tough, nobody wants to change. People just want more of the same, and they're comfortable, and who can blame them? They only know this system, and the idea of anything else kind of causes them to completely short circuit. But if you travel around the world a little bit and see how people live in other places, it's not the same, right? America is a very unique place, the way that we live our lives. Even if it never happens in my lifetime, it seems like a worthwhile venture to try and at least set in motion some of these ideas, which really got me thinking about like what an insane trajectory we were headed on, right? That this idea is like, we need to keep buying stuff to keep the economy growing, but then we're kind of like literally stuffing our trash bags full of the old stuff to continue to have the new stuff, and it just doesn't seem to be a great model. And certainly now, the fact that people are actually discussing it is incredibly encouraging, but I'm quite worried at the same time, because most of the dialogue is centered around trying to restart this kind of broken engine of a retail-based economy, so we continue to somehow infuse the market with enough money again so that it will start all up again and the engine continues and people will have enough money to buy stuff all the time. And then, I don't think it's gonna, I have to be kind of hopeful. I don't think it's gonna be the same. And another reason to me I'm hopeful is because my work has proven to me some really interesting things, right? People come back to me and say, like, I'm conscious now, right? And they'll say it by saying, I can't go into the store without thinking of your pictures, or feel like I'm being looked at. Or people come back to me and say, like, I never noticed how many empty retail spaces, and what are we gonna actually do with all this stuff? Why aren't there city ordinances that basically say we can only allot a certain amount of land to retail? And if a retailer comes in and builds a property, that they have to be responsible for its cleanup. And that's happening, and that happens, and my work is part of that dialogue. And it would like mirror what's happening in the world. It would be a reflection of things going on, and people could remember in photographs what is happening out in the world that they don't want to pay attention to. Because of all this stuff can be really, I guess, cynical, or can potentially be depressing to look at all this stuff. I have to have a great sense of humor about it, and I just think these things are just, in an existentialist way, like ridiculous and funny and weird, and it's wonderful to be able to laugh at ourselves. What's been great about this whole Copia project is that every time I turn the corner and notice one thing, over to my right is a whole new subject that is worthy of digging into for another year or 2 or 3 or 4. At a certain point, I kind of have to just decide that this is the bookends of the project, and I'm thinking about it now as like a 10-year project with one book, an art photography book, but also a book that brings in different kinds of writers and specialists who are interested in these ideas as well. Economists, cultural critics, and maybe even anthropologists, so that it's a decade of the beginning of the 21st century. Who knows what will really happen, but that's my idea.